Commissioner Hawkins?
Here.
Commissioner Holton?
Here.
Commissioner Jolly? Commissioner Pierce?
Here.
Commissioner Randall?
Here.
Chair Spielman?
Present.
Commissioner Wolk is not yet present. We do have a quorum.
Have a quorum. Very good. Ricky, still broadcasting, still recording okay?
Yep.
Very good, thank you. Well, we have a lot of important business to do today, as always. Let's run through a couple of matters quickly. I would like to point out the obvious to those here today. We are very fortunate to have three what I know will be outstanding new commissioners who bring their perspectives, their experience, and their history to the commission. And I want to do just a cursory welcome now to returning Commissioner Perry Pierce. Welcome back, Commissioner. To Commissioner Kent Jolly. Welcome, Commissioner.
Thank you.
And to Commissioner Ashley Yeager. Welcome, Commissioner. We'll go around where it says Commissioner comments and do some quick introductions, but we couldn't let another minute go without me saying, and I know I'm speaking for everybody here, that we are thrilled, delighted, and looking forward to your service and your contributions. This is not you joining the other six. This is the new commission of 9. So welcome. Thank you. Approval of the minutes is our next agenda item. Let me first ask, on the agenda itself, does the public have a copy of what we're proposing our agenda for today?
What is available online does encompass a slight change that we made late on Friday afternoon, which was to add an 11:15 item to allow for, during which the commission can discuss the Weld County IGA. That is also posted on the door. That is the only change to the one that has already been printed. So,
Thank you, Ms. Murphy. Let me ask my fellow commissioners, are folks comfortable with this new 11:15 a.m. agenda item, which would come out of executive session, and then have a discussion regarding the possibility of entering into a new governmental agreement with Weld County regarding permitting process?
Thank you.
Very good. Hearing no objection, this will be our agenda for today as posted on Friday and available now. Thank you, Ms. Murphy. Approval of the minutes. Commissioners, you should have received in your board packages a draft of the minutes of our last commission meeting up in Glenwood Springs. Thank you again to our friends in Garfield County for hosting us. What's the commission's pleasure with regard to those minutes?
Move to approve. Second.
Thank you. Motion is made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the question. All in favor of approval of the minutes as proposed, as presented, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Hearing none, those minutes are approved and entered into the record. Thank you. Report from the Executive Director's Office. Executive Director Randall, good morning.
Great, thank you. Good morning, Mr. Chair. Good morning, Commissioners. Good morning, members of the audience and those listening at home, presumably not at home, probably in their office. But so again, I'm Bob Randall, Director of the Department of Natural Resources. In the spirit of our relatively brisk agenda, I will keep this report fairly quick, but I'm happy to take questions on anything that might be on your all minds. So first, I want to address a couple of things with regard to personnel, the most obvious of which, as Chairman Spielman noted, was we are now a full 9-member commission. So I want to welcome our new commissioners and thank you in advance for your service. I look forward to getting to know all of you, and if there's any way that I can support you in your role as commissioner here, I'd be happy to do so. So again, I look forward to getting to know all of you. A couple of personnel changes within the Executive Director's Office I want to note. First, I recently appointed an acting deputy director at DNR. So this was my old position that I held for 6 years, and then it took me a couple months to work through some restructuring in the Executive Director's Office. But I asked Ginny Brannon to be my acting deputy. Many of you might know Ginny from her time within the Executive Director's Office as the Assistant Director for Water and Energy. She, for the last 2+ years has been the director of our Division of Reclamation, Mining, and Safety. And she's going to continue in that role while also assisting me in the Executive Director's Office. I've also created a new position within the Executive Director's Office, a Chief Operating and Chief Performance Officer. So this was a position that existed for a few years when Mike King took the helm in DNR, and I assumed those responsibilities in 2014. I'm splitting them out again to provide, because I really do think that we can provide better service to our customers, both internal within our divisions and external with the public with which we deal, by having a focus on our accounting, purchasing, human resources, and other central services. And this role will also focus on departmental performance management and measurement, again, with the goal of providing efficient service to everyone with whom we work. So that application period just closed last week, so I hope to have someone in that spot by the next time we all meet. So that was on personnel. A couple of things. This last week was a week of gatherings, and I just want to note the great production that we had here in Denver with COGCC Rocky Mountain Energy Summit. I saw many of you there, and they, as always, put on an outstanding event. It was also the week of Colorado Water Congress up in Steamboat Springs, at which there was a lot of discussion about Colorado's water plan and how that is being implemented, and just how we'll continue to work through some of the challenges that Colorado faces with a growing population and in terms of water supplies. And then finally, my week ended at the Colorado State Fair on Friday. Went down for the legislative barbecue. It was, again, good to see a lot of people that I only ever see in the Capitol, but to see them in Pueblo at the legislative barbecue. So again, it was just a good week of gatherings like that. One thing I just want to note, next week the Colorado Parks and Wildlife Commission is meeting in Creede, at which they will discuss, among other things, a proposed, or the possibility of a fee increase for in-state hunting and fishing licenses. This discussion is part of I was telling Commissioner Holton, 18 meetings they're having around the state. So those of you who served on the Governor's Oil and Gas Task Force, they're rivaling the miles being put on state vehicles, among others, with 18 meetings around the state to get sportsman feedback on the possibility of increasing in-state license fees. And then finally, this is just, again, we're still in the process of planning for next year, both budget decision items and legislative proposals. That's a process that I work closely with our division directors, with the Executive Director's Office staff, and with the Governor's Office, and look forward to being able to report in more detail on that stuff as the fall wears on. So that concludes my report. Again, I'm happy to take any questions from commissioners on anything.
Thank you, Executive Director Randall. Commissioners, questions? Okay, here. Congratulations to Deputy Director Brown.
Chairman, I wanted to note that Commissioner Wolk has joined us.
Thank you. Duly and gladly noted. Welcome. Report from the Director, Director Lepore.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Let me add my welcome to our two new and one returning commissioner. Glad to have you all on board. I've had the opportunity to speak briefly with all of you in the past couple of weeks. Probably seemed a little chaotic. You should get used to that. We're glad to have you here. We are going to hold this afternoon an orientation for the new commissioners as well as existing commissioners and returning commissioners. To the extent that you would like to participate, we would love to have you. That will be open to the public, and we'll start essentially within a short time after we conclude our business today. Also want everyone to know that we are going to hold a reception this afternoon for the new commissioners at Agave, which is at 10th and Broadway. The state is springing for some appetizers, and everyone gets to buy their own alcohol. But again, you all are welcome to stop by if you would like to.
There's a rumor going around that the chairman was going to buy the first round, but If I'm late and you're late, that'll be a smaller check.
Madison had a very small number of wells within the county. Adams has about 1,000 wells in the county, and I think that will actually work in favor of this concept of a dedicated inspector.
Very good, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Excuse the interruption.
In Weld County, we have been talking to Weld County for several weeks now. Weld has previously allowed oil and gas operations in the unincorporated parts of the county as a matter of right. That is, under their zoning code, if you want to put an oil and gas location on your property, you just go right ahead. You don't need the county's blessing. They are changing that to make it a use by special review, which means there will be a county process that operators will have to go through. They will have to get a permit from the county in order to have that oil and gas location. Our engagement with Weld County has been around how we might synchronize what I'll call the pre-application procedures, the notification procedures, the meetings and such that are part of our rules that likely also will be part of Weld County rules. Is there an opportunity there to synchronize those and perhaps eliminate some duplication? We are going to have an executive session on that topic today with the commissioners and Assistant Attorney General Matter. And then after that executive session, Bruce Barker from Weld County will be here, and we will have an opportunity to talk with you a little bit more about that. Again, something that we would bring to you for approval before executing. Next, I want to let everyone know that given the commodity price, we've talked about this before, many of you will know that about 75% of our budget comes from a tax on the value of hydrocarbons produced in the state. It's a mill levy is what we call that. The mill levy, we have statutory authority to set the mill levy. The commission does by rulemaking. For many years, that rate has been at 0.7 mils. We have statutory authority to raise it to 1.7 mils. We've been able to keep it at 0.7 for a variety of reasons, and a lot of credit for that goes to our financial manager, Wendy Schultz. With the decline in price, our projections are that if we keep the mill levy where it is, we would see something like a $3 million shortfall in our revenue in fiscal year 2017-18. For that reason, we are engaged with the Executive Director's Office and the Office of State Planning and Budget on the potential for raising the mill levy to cover that forecast shortfall in revenue. Again, to do that, we would have to have a rulemaking. The challenging part, as you can imagine, there is a lot of fluidity in the variables that are at play. The price is one, and production is the other. Production, as you all know, has actually continued to increase through 2015. We don't expect that to continue, so we do forecast these shortfalls in revenue. We, as I said, have engaged with OSPB. We kind of want to make sure we're all on the same page before announcing a rulemaking, but it is likely that a rulemaking to raise the mill levy is in your future sometime between now and, I would say, January. Let me stop talking. All right.
Pause there for a moment.
Yes.
Commissioner comments for the director? Commissioner Pierce, please.
Chairman, if I may refresh my recollection, please, Matt. If we're going to do a rulemaking between now and the first of the year, would you expect that that would be a separate commission proceeding, or would it simply be a part of what I guess is November and December docket?
Thank you, Commissioner. At this point, we haven't put a very sharp pencil to this, but we haven't contemplated a standalone separate rulemaking hearing.
Yep.
We've talked about trying to work it into existing scheduled hearings.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
No, thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, Director.
Thanks. Okay, let me touch real briefly on a couple of statistics. Obviously, the commodity price has had an effect on the level of activity in the state, and I turn to these stats almost, every time we have these hearings just to kind of see where we are. And here's where we are. Drilling permits, that is a permit to drill a new well, are at an annualized rate of about 3,000, which is fairly comparable to 2015. It's down about 20-ish% from prior years. Before 2015, we were processing or receiving about 4,000 applications for permits to drill annually. So 3,100, a drop off, but not terribly dramatic. That's less true for new well starts. New well starts in the state are down dramatically. We are on an annualized rate of new well starts in 2016 of 925. That compares to 2,200 in 2015. Let's see if I get these right. About 1,400 in 2015 and 2,200 in 2014. Did I get that right yet? 2015, 1,400, 2014, 2,200, down to about 900. So pretty dramatic drop-off in new well starts. The vast majority of those wells continue to be horizontal wells, which is another dramatic change that we've seen over the last several years. That trend continues. In fact, of those new wells, about 78% are horizontal. So the trend is pretty obvious. We continue to inspect wells at a pretty amazing rate. Again, annualized inspection rate, we expect to hit more than 40,000 well inspections this year. And that would be about the third year in a row for a record of production. I would like to close my comments with a personal note and a community note. I like to talk about oil and gas as one community, one large community that has a wide range of stakeholders and interests. It doesn't always feel that way, or maybe it does just feel like a big family, and there's lots of different opinions. There's also a smaller community, the community of those that practice in front of the commission regularly, and who we have lots of opportunities to transact with. Last week on Wednesday, I was in Boston, and I got an email that the subject line was sad news. And I opened it, and the first line said that Chelsea Russell had passed away. And this is what my brain did. My brain said, I know Chelsea Russell. Chelsea Russell can't have died. She was young, in her 30s, in the prime of her life. She was athletic. She was terrific to practice with professionally, and she had 2 young kids. So I reread the email and put it in context and had to come to terms with the fact that it was true that she had died. I had to wait a day to call back to here and speak to some of my colleagues and find out how it had happened, and in the meantime I thought, how could this have happened? I had a few hypotheses, but the way it happened is both tragic and astonishing. And I think many of you know the story, but for those of you who don't, she was on a family vacation in Lake Powell. Her youngest child fell overboard as their boat was coming into dock. They didn't immediately realize that that had happened, and when they did, Chelsea dove in and swam to her son to rescue him. She was able to keep him out of the water and alive long enough for a boat to come rescue him, but that effort cost her her life. So it reminds us, we don't ever know what happens next. We can't allow ourselves really to think about things like that. It would make each day impossible. But life is transient, and it's very hard to come to terms with this kind of loss. So look around and give thanks and give love to your loved ones, and be kind, and we will remember Chelsea and pray for she and her family and her colleagues. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Director. May I suggest we take just a moment of silence, please, and out of respect for our Chelsea and her loved ones, and as we would for any member of the community with such a tragic circumstance. Just take a moment. Thank you. Our thoughts and prayers are with Chelsea Russell's family, friends, colleagues, and those in the community who will miss her. Let's move to commissioner comments, please. In addition to hearing whatever's on the minds of our 9 commissioners, I'd like to also suggest that maybe we introduce and reintroduce ourselves to one another. Instead of just asking our 3 new colleagues to talk about themselves, let's introduce ourselves to them as well. Dr. Walk, may I start with you, please?
Sure. Larry Wolk, Executive Director and Chief Medical Officer for the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment, and welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Perry Pierce. As some of you who don't know may have gathered, I am a reappointee, and I refer to myself as a retread for the commission. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm glad that memories were short, so they were willing to let me serve again. I look forward to it. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Bill Hawkins, and I'm a retired petroleum engineer. I used to work for Amoco and then BP for 30 plus years, and been on the commission now for a couple of years. I took Perry's place when he decided whatever happened, he needed to back out for a little bit, and I'm thoroughly enjoying my stay on the commission. I'm glad to have new commissioners here. Thank you.
I'm Tommy Holton, and I hold the elected officials spot on the commission, and welcome to the new commissioners. Now we don't have to worry about a quorum.
Thank you, Mayor.
I'm Kent Jolly. I'm from Glenwood Springs, cattle rancher. Fill a couple of spots west of the Continental Divide on agriculture, and had a fair amount of experience with operators working on our ranch. Look forward to it.
Welcome, Commissioner Jolly. I'm Andy Spielman. I was originally appointed to service with Mayor Holton, Commissioner Pierce, Commissioner Benton, I believe. So that piece of the band is back together. I occupy the seat that is designated for somebody with experience in environmental and wildlife regulation. And my day job is I'm a natural resource attorney here in private practice in Denver. And it's an honor to serve with you all and to welcome our new colleagues. Thank you. Counselor?
My name is Jake Matter. I'm an Assistant Attorney General with the Colorado AG's office. I've been with the Commission, counsel to the Commission for just over 5 years, and prior to that, I was in private practice.
Thank you. John Benton. Served in one of the industry positions, 30-some-odd years as a petroleum engineer. Went to school in this fine state, so that's credited for my great education. Currently work as a general manager for Black Hills Exploration and Production, and we have operations here in Colorado.
Hi, I'm Ashley Ager, and I want to thank everyone for having me here, and I look forward to serving on the commission. I'm from Durango, Colorado, and I'm here serving as the seat for soil reclamation and conservation. So thank you.
And good morning. I'm Bob Randall. I'm the Executive Director of the Colorado Department of Natural Resources. Director?
I'm Matt Lepore. I'm the Director of the Commission. I've been the Director for 4 years. Prior to that, I served 2 years in the seat Jake occupies as the Assistant Attorney General. I'm a lawyer by profession, and I am a native of Colorado from the fine bedroom community of Littleton.
Ms. Murphy?
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Julie Murphy, and I'm technically the Hearings and Regulatory Affairs Manager at COGCC, and in that capacity, I also get to serve as your secretary. So I work closely with each one of you and look forward to the new band of 9.
Thank you all. Other commissioner comments? I'll just throw one out there because I do the opposite at the RAC. I also chair the Regional Air Quality Commission for Governor Hickenlooper and make announcement about our rulemakings to that body. The Regional Air Quality Council has recommended to the Air Quality Control Commission a draft, what we call the Moderate Attainment State Implementation Plan. It's the next step in demonstrating to the federal government and frankly to our community that steps are being taken to continue to improve air quality with respect to ground level ozone in our hot summer months. That plan, many people in this room frankly have participated in and helped draft it, and it was unanimously voted out of the RAC, I believe, and is before the Air Quality Control Commission for hearings fall of 2016. And there are opportunities for public comment. Commissioner Wolk, it's a commission related to the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment. Your folks have been tremendous in pulling that together. Is there anything you would add to? Thank you.
Represented it well, thank you.
Okay, well, thank you and your team at CDPHE. Let's move to our right on time. Thank you, Enrique. 9:35 agenda item. Director Lepore, I turn this to you for proper introduction?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, Ms. Chase, do you want to come forward? Thank you. I'm just going to let Ms. Chase introduce herself and have a word with you all.
Welcome.
Good morning. My name is Kathy Chase, and I am the new IT Director for the Department of Natural Resources. I also oversee the IT services for the Department of Local Affairs. I started this position on June 1st, taking over for Jerry Smith, who retired. I've been a very long time state employee. I won't tell you how long, because that'll tell you how old I am. But a very long time. I have served in a number of capacities throughout my state career in a number of state departments. So I have a lot of experience on the business side. I've been with OIT, the Office of Information Technology with the Governor's Office, since its inception. So I have a view of what it was prior to and also what happened afterwards. A couple of things that I have been focusing on in the last couple months and will continue to focus on in the next few months are two things really. One is I really am focused on trying to improve the overall working relationship with the Department of Natural Resources. I've partnered with Director Randall and his leadership team trying to improve that overall working relationship. I know there's a lot of things that have happened over time, but I am really hoping that we improve going forward. And a couple of ways that I'm hoping to do that. One is a really intense focus on customer service and making sure that we are delivering. So making sure that the OIT teams that serve the Department of Natural Resources are really focused on getting work done, making sure that customers are taken care of, making sure that we have proper handoff. I think sometimes with our teams being structured the way they are, sometimes that handoff doesn't go as nicely as it should. And so I'm really focusing on getting those guys all together so that we're all on the same page and making sure that we are doing the proper handoff so that your service delivery improves over time. So those are my two main areas of focus. I think overall, I'm a really good communicator, probably a little over communicator if you can be. But I think that sharing information, being transparent, if we make a mistake, if we screw something up, I want to make sure that we hold ourselves accountable to that and say that we did it and do all we can to fix it. And so that's kind of how I've been working going forward. I think that Director Randall and I have, I think, started a really good, strong relationship. Started over a really good, I hope, a strong relationship, and I just hope that that improves. So thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Please.
Could I? So Kathy, thanks for being here. I just want to recognize an additional individual here in the role that he plays, and that's Dave Kuhlman, the Deputy Director here at COGCC. He sits on DNR's IT Steering Committee on behalf of the Commission and brings those issues forward. And I really just want to acknowledge Kathy's focus and the partnership that we're developing, and at the risk of entirely overstating this, it's a new day in DNR when it comes to IT and our relationship with OIT and moving things forward. So I'm excited about the new partnership that we have, and again, just thanks for taking the time to be here to visit with the commissioners.
All right, thank you.
Well, it's great. Thank you very much for introducing yourself. I'll just tell a quick anecdote. I think I was 3 years ago, something like that. I had just started my practice in Colorado, and one of my first assignments was I was sent down to do some data research at the COGCC by the senior lawyer I worked for. And it worked well then. People were able to help me find what I needed, and I know it's even better now. We have, I think the public's access to public data is very important to, I think, the entire commission, certainly to me. And so thank you for all that has been accomplished already and whatever's still to come in that regard.
All right.
And thanks for making time to come see us today.
Sure. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Anyone else have any questions or comments for Ms. Chase? Excellent. Thank you again. Okay. Well, audience comments. One of the most important parts, I think, of our day. I'm going to ask our hearing manager, Ms. Murphy, to help us with an orderly process to ensure that we hear from folks in a timely manner today, and talk about how we typically operate in terms of time management as well. We're pretty much on track with our schedule today, and we'll endeavor to do so. So let me turn it over, Ms. Murphy, to you, and to those of you who are going to address us today. Thank you in advance for coming and sharing your thoughts with us.
Thank you, Chairman. The one piece I wanted to note is that on Sunday evening, I received a comment from Nadine Worley that I forwarded on to each of you and provided a hard copy of her email. If you'd like a hard copy also of the article she attached, please let me know and I'll make a copy for you today. But that is in your email box. And moving forward, I understand that 5 folks have kind of self-coordinated, for lack of a better term. So I'd like to call all 5 of you up so we can just move through in kind of an organized fashion. And I apologize in advance to everyone for mispronunciations. Christy Malnati, Rick Gerner, Sandra Duran, Dawn Stein, and Bill Schell. Is that correct? Great. If you want to come forward, you can occupy these 4 seats and then maybe one right here, if that's all right.
While folks are getting organized, if I could ask somebody on COGCC staff, we still have a bunch of standees. Is there anything we can do to get a few more chairs in here? Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. I'm told there's 2 seats, folks on the, I don't know, my left, the west side of the room. And we'll work on getting everybody as comfortable as we can. The other thing we can do is I can just keep talking. That typically clears some of the room. Ms. Murphy, you want to lead us through, please? Ladies and gentlemen, thank you. Welcome. Ms. Murphy will make introductions or help you make introductions and keep time for us. Thank you.
We'll start with Christy Malnati.
Good morning. My name is Christy Malnati, and but among us, we will talk about 15 minutes. Mine will be the longest as an overview of the proposed Triple Creek directional site in Greeley, Colorado. This actually would be the first UMA, urban mitigation area, on the Front Range under the new COGCC regulations. And I know it's not really on the docket yet, but we thought we'd get down here and make a few comments. I'm a retired teacher and a longtime resident of Greeley and Weld County, and I know the value of the oil and gas industry to our community. Indeed, Weld County is home to 40% of all of Colorado's current drilling and oil sites. Certainly, the industry can and should be good for all of us. I am not a fractivist. I am a believer in best practices and a believer in negotiation to find resolutions. I have lived for 13 years in the neighborhood that will be most affected by Extraction's Triple Creek proposed directional drilling site. My home is about 2,000 feet from this site, but also located within the 1/2 to 1 mile radius from this site are over 600 other homes, 2 schools, 1 kindergarten through 12th grade and 1 high school, with a combined student population of 2,200. Within this radius, there is also an assisted living nursing care facility home to approximately 100 elderly citizens. A 1/2 mile from the site is a large city recreational facility called the Greeley Funplex, with ball fields, parks, and a bike trail. And adjacent to the Funplex and within the radius is a large commercial area which includes 3 fast food restaurants, a busy marketplace-sized King Soopers, a University of Colorado hospital, emergency center, a bank, and many other small businesses, all of which create significant traffic that would have to share a deteriorating 2-lane 71st Avenue with an inordinate amount of oil field traffic, which in the proposal is the site's only designated access road. I am a lung cancer survivor, and as such, I am particularly sensitive about lung health, especially for the children who will play outdoors at recess, the elderly who live in the neighborhood, and those who already suffer from lung disorders such as asthma. Air quality is something we need to consider with this kind of project, especially due to its extremely large scale. This project has the potential to create and emit into the air lung-damaging VOCs, as well as producing harmful diesel pollution from both trucks and equipment. Indeed, the main reason I'm here today is to ask the COGCC to consider the impact of this very large-scale UMA facility in our community. Extraction is currently proposing 22 wells and 22 tanks with water storage, and to be the first in the state to drill the longest distance of 2.5 miles horizontally. I have to ask, is a heavily populated neighborhood, commercial district, and location near schools the best place to try out an experimental technology of 2.5 miles of directional drilling? And all of this after Extraction initially, when they came to the neighborhood, assured us that theirs would be a tankless operation and make use of pipelines in order to cause the least disruption to the people of the area and to the land, which is a habitat for the protected red-winged hawk. Unfortunately, Extraction has reneged on this promise. We might wonder why. My neighbors and I believe that the magnitude of this industrial-sized proposal should be located in an area away from homes, schools, medical facilities, and businesses. However, I also know that this proposal, if accepted at this site, will be the first on Colorado's Front Range to come under the COGCC's new rules and regulations for a large-scale UMA. I sincerely hope that we can all get this right together. The oil and gas industry needs this. The citizens of Colorado deserve this. Of course, our concerns are the usual: noise, odor, dust, air pollution, light pollution, road and traffic problems, as well as the potential for explosions and fires. The visual unsightliness of so many tanks, while not the primary concern, is also a factor. The COGCC's Rule 604.C4 concerning UMAs states, quote, "UMAs should be built as far as possible from existing building units using the best available technology to avoid or minimize adverse impacts to adjoining land uses." Included in the rule is the combined requirement of best management practices, which we can all agree with required mitigation measures, and that is one of the things that we're concerned about. As the extraction proposal stands today, it doesn't seem that they're actually in compliance with this rule. Indeed, I listened to the COGC's hearing of July 19th this year, and I happily heard about the use of pipelines and the HVP high vapor pressure oil gathering system as used by Anadarko. And I think that would, and I'm paraphrasing from what I heard, that it would drastically reduce the potential for hydrocarbon emissions, it would reduce the size of surface disturbance and impacts, it would eliminate most liquid tank storage, significantly reduce truck traffic, and reduce noise, all while using proven, reliable, accurate measurement technology. Well, to me, that sounds like best available technology, which I ask be applied to this project if it goes forward. It could be a clearly negotiated and regulated conclusion that would result in a win-win situation, not only for my local neighborhood, but also for citizens throughout Colorado, and ultimately for the continued success of the oil and gas industry, which does indeed bring significant benefits to our state. I thank each of you for your time and your consideration, and Rick Gerner will be our next speaker.
Try to be a speaker. My name is Richard Gerner, and I live in the Mountain Vista subdivision, same as Christie. My house is now within 1,100 feet of the Triple Creek project. The designated location for this project impacts, as Christie said, a multitude of neighborhoods, schools, and large shopping centers, as you well know now, and requiring a pipeline approach will significantly reduce the proposed truck traffic short and long term, which is a huge concern for everyone living there. My wife and I bought this property 16 years ago, knowing that the property behind our house was zoned residential low density. This was to be our retirement home. But due to the proposed project, we are now faced with the choices of living with the consequences of the UMA or being forced to move. There is a solution, however, that would allow us to stay in our home. Realizing that this project is going to happen, it begs the question, what will make the project livable for my wife and me, our neighbors in the Greeley community? The answer is, as Christie said, the use of the best technology available, which to me is the use of a pipeline. The traffic, environmental concerns, and visual magnitude of 22 wells and storage tanks have always been three of the biggest concerns of everybody in the neighborhood. In all honesty, I doubt that there is a person on the board that could tell me that the choice for a home would be a home that is 1,100 feet from 22 wells and 22 storage tanks. That will be there for the next 25 to 30 years. A pipeline would certainly rectify all those concerns. I attended the very first community meeting, and that was back in September of 2014. And I can tell you unequivocally that Extraction promised those in attendance that a pipeline approach was where they were going. It was that promise that backed us all away. We just all said, okay, we can live with that. We can deal with that. Requiring a pipeline will require efforts on the part of the COGCC, Extraction Oil and Gas, the City of Greeley, and in cooperation with other oil and gas producers. But it would certainly alleviate one of the most significant concerns in our neighborhood. I would hope that the COGCC would do everything within its influence to make a pipeline a stipulation for the approval of the first large residential UMA on the Front Range. In association with the pipeline request is a disappointment that Extraction failed to submit a thorough alternative site analysis, which is required by the COGCC under Rule 604C2E. While I don't know the details, there is conversation that alternative sites do exist that would greatly enhance the ability of Extraction to pipe out the product. A pipeline approach would honor the commitment Extraction originally made in the first neighborhood meeting regarding the site and go a long way toward fostering a positive relationship with our neighborhoods. I finally want to stress that our neighborhood has a significant demographic made up of senior citizens. One of the health problems associated with aging is insomnia, which is a serious health problem that is not debatable and needs to be addressed. We are asking that the COGCC require that hydraulic fracturing be prohibited at the site during the hours of 7 p.m. and 7 a.m., and that Director Matt Lepore require that Extraction utilize the best technology available that would reduce noise levels 5 decibels below state requirements. I want to emphasize, as Christy said, we are not against oil and gas. I love to heat my home, I love to drive my car, and I know there's a ton of other things that oil and gas does for citizens. I will mention that this site was controversial, and that the Planning Commission voted this thing down 6-zip. And the only thing that flipped it is state law. The city decided that they had to obviously deal with that, and so they weren't going to deal with it, and so they reversed the vote. One of the things I want to mention real quick, then I'm done, is that when this happened, and I can remember 2014 they came, they made us feel good, then all of a sudden I got a letter in the mail saying, in about the next 60 days we're going to have a planning commission hearing, and so we had to get ready. And I went around in my particular subdivision, which is only one following in there. It has 55 homes, 53 of them signed the petition, basically said we don't really want this site here. But here's the thing that was interesting to me. 6 of the people that live in that subdivision worked in the oil and gas industry. Worked for obviously did not work for Extraction. And 4 of them signed the petition and said unequivocally, our company wouldn't go back there. We would not pit people against people. And that to me said a lot. Extractions approached our neighborhood repeatedly saying they wanted to be good neighbors and that the COGCC and the oil industry talk about doing the right thing. I think this is a great opportunity for them to do that. Certainly, there's a way to make a pipeline work on this project. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Murphy, maybe give folks a time check so they can organize.
You're running over, so if you guys can shorten it up, I'd appreciate it.
I'm Sandra Duran. I live at Eagle Ridge in Greeley, Colorado.
Welcome.
Thank you. And mine is really brief. I have a comment on Extraction. No oil wells means something to my neighbors and me, so we are here to share our concerns. There should be no oil wells within 2,500 feet of a school, residence, or hospital unless the owners of residence, school, or hospital have given specific written permission. People who own only mineral rights but not the residence are not sufficient. And I stand by that, and I'm also a comment on the causes coming up 407, which is a property I own on the east side of town, docket 1608-00340. And I'm also protesting that for my brother John Gurchin and Sandra K. Duran on the fact of pooling. I did not want that to come into our property too over there, and we refused the royalties, and we refused to sign the lease. And thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Duran.
Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Don Stein, and I live at 1337 71st Avenue in Greeley, Colorado. I have a small acreage, 3.78 acres in West Greeley. I've lived there for the past 32 years. When John, my late husband, and I bought the property, it was dirt roads, and if we saw 5 cars a day, was a lot of traffic. A lot has changed in our area over the past 32 years, but the biggest change is what you are considering, allowing 22 wells and 22 oil tanks in the middle of our neighborhood. In July of 2014, we received notice from Extraction Oil they would be holding a public meeting for the homeowners out here to inform us of their future plans to drill 22 oil and gas wells right behind my home. That night, they laid out their plans, how it was all going to be state-of-the-art. They would be piping everything out to keep the traffic down. They were going to do all of the things possible to leave the smallest footprint they could for the surrounding homeowners. We questioned them that night about the current access to that property, which is a road at the top of the hill of 71st, which makes it a very dangerous place for the amount of traffic they were talking with this many wells. They said they were working on finding a different access at that time, but of course did not say where. A year after the first meeting with homeowners, they began the process of getting approval from Greeley and announced at that time they would no longer be using a pipeline. Because of the decline in oil prices, they would be using oil trucks instead. They informed the city and residents at the last hearing they had found another location for the 11,000 truck trips during the drilling and completion of the well. They bought an easement from my next door neighbor that places the new road 30 feet from my bedroom. I had no idea this was happening and was never notified. Extraction has still never contacted me. I've been devastated by this news. I was just about to sign an agreement, with the city of Greeley that would have provided me a life estate so I could remain on the property until I die. Placing the access road right next to my home makes that impossible. I will not, or anyone, be able to live with 11,000 trucks passing next to the bedroom 24 hours a day. The amount of emissions from the 40 to 50 trucks daily and the lines of diesel trucks idling right next to my bedroom waiting to get onto 71st Avenue will make my home not only unlivable, but also unsaleable. There are some days I have waited for up to 47, and yes, I count every day, vehicles to pass to even exit my driveway. The terrain at the place where they propose to enter and exit is in an air basin, where the emission pollutants from these semis will not move away from the area. We learned the hard way. When burning our downed tree limbs on a calm day, we filled the entire basin with smoke. It took over 4 hours just for it to clear out. The Greeley City Council approved Extraction's proposal because they said these decisions reside with you, the COGCC. You are my only hope to prevent me from being forced to lose the value and livability of my home and the place I've lived for the past 32 years. I do have a map for you all and current photos so you can see just how close this is. Thank you.
Thanks for your patience. I'm going to cut my comments in half to be respectful of the time frame that you've allowed to us. HVP, the new technology that Matt Lepore has praised, is a significant advance that's been sponsored by Anadarko.
Pardon me, sir, could you, there's folks listening outside of the room on the broadcast.
Sure.
If you could introduce
I'm
yourself,
sorry.
please. Thank you.
HVP is a technology sponsored by
An introduction. Just tell us who you are.
Sure.
Thank
I'm
you.
Bill Shell,
Thank you.
former Director of Marketing for the state of Colorado for what is now J.P. Morgan Chase, and former United Way Drive Chair for Weld County and Greeley, and have lived in the area for almost 50 years.
Thank you, Mr. Shell.
HVP is a new technology introduced by Anadarko, a company which we highly value, along with Noble, and we'd love to see that kind of technology spread throughout the state of Colorado, particularly for this, starting in this project. The other thing that I would mention is that the reputation of this body and of your director is extremely high. I asked an attorney who appears before this body from time to time what he thought of, if he shared the same opinion about Matt Lepore that I did, and he said, yes, I do. I think he's probably the best director in the 50 states. That's the way I feel. I'll tell you why I feel that way. A couple of years ago, we had a situation involving a site that was fraught with problems in Greeley, right next to a high school and right next to a 1,500-person apartment complex. We alerted Matt of the concerns. He got to work, and before long, he had secured an operator who had a site not too far away that had previously been drilled and was willing to make that site available to Synergy, who was the applicant, and that moved it completely away from that particular location, and we will be eternally grateful for that improvement in the city of Greeley. We hope that you will recognize, and I think you do recognize, that the kind of advancements that Anadarko has come up with, if put to work in many of the urban drilling projects that are around the state, are likely to reduce the resistance to oil and gas operations, and are likely to reduce the likelihood that citizens of the state of Colorado will vote for a sledgehammer approach in the fall rather than choosing the fly swatter that's available through this commission. So we appreciate your efforts. We encourage you to continue those efforts to strengthen not only the oil and gas industry, but the confidence of the citizens of Colorado, so that we can live happily together and have a relationship that is positive from both an economic and a social standpoint. And if I may, Director Lepore and Julie, may I pass out summaries of everything we have done?
Copies also of each of our statements?
If you give them to me, I'll make sure that they're distributed.
Okay. Here they come. Thank you very much for your time today. Does anybody have any questions?
Very good. Well, thank you. Ms. Malnati, Mr. Gerner, Ms. Duran-Stein, and Mr. Shale, thank you very much for your thoughtful comments and your time today.
Thank you.
It's been a privilege.
Thank you. Ms. Murphy, we have other members of the public signed up to speak today?
We do. We have 6 others, Chairman. Dan Haley next, and then Brad Hawley.
At the same time, too, if that's okay. Good morning.
Welcome.
Thank you for having us. My name is Dan Haley. I'm the CEO of the Colorado Oil and Gas Association. This is Brad Holly. He is the chairman of the board for the Colorado Oil and Gas Association. Before we begin, I wanted to add to the accolades of Director Lepore, but just to say thank you very much for that very nice and fitting tribute for Chelsea Russell. She'll be missed by everyone in the oil and gas industry, and certainly all of us at COGA, so thank you for that. We wanted to introduce ourselves to all of you, but especially to the new members of the commission. COGA is a statewide trade association representing oil and natural gas companies. We have hundreds of members across the state, and our mission is to foster and promote the efficient and responsible development and production of Colorado's natural resources. Basically, our goal is to ensure that oil and gas operations can continue here in Colorado within a stable, cost-effective regulatory environment. I wanted all of you to know that we value innovative approaches to engagement and education, whether that's with communities, our regulators, elected leaders, or within industry itself. And while we want to represent the best interests of our industry statewide, we are always willing to engage in thoughtful policy that prioritizes the best interests of our state and our communities. Brad?
As COGA chairman, I can tell you that our organization is always willing to come to the table to engage in thoughtful dialogue when it comes to regulations. Our goal is to create transparent, accountable collaboration with the stakeholders, including our regulator, and to lead the industry with integrity, honesty, and respect. We know that we may not always agree on proposed solutions, but we will always participate in a thoughtful and reasonable discussion when it comes to regulations and concerns over industry. Also, please see us as a resource. If you have any questions or concerns about industry, whether it's something you've heard or a new technology that you would like more information on, never hesitate to reach out to COGA. Thank you for our service. Thank you for your service to our state.
Thank you, Mr. Haley and Mr. Holly. Not easy to say. Welcome. Any questions, members and commissioners? Great, thank you very much.
For your time. We
No, of
appreciate
course, we appreciate your spending time with us.
Ms. Harper?
Ms. Harper, good morning.
Good morning. My name is Amanda Harper, and in November 24th, about 2014, I woke up one day and found out that there were going to be 12 wells applied for in front of our house. We live in a small, rural, beautiful community. It was going to be 1,100 feet from our house, so we didn't get notified by Encana, and neither did other neighbors who were and have been extremely concerned about this. And since then, I have been on a pretty major escapade, disruption to my life, to fight the 12 wells and the huge industrial facility site that is planned to be another about 1,200 feet in front of our house. This is a rural agricultural neighborhood. 4 neighbors extremely concerned about this have also been fighting in their way. And we had neighborhood meetings. I've been here between 6 and 8 times explaining to the COGCC why this doesn't work for our lives. We put all of our money, our financial investment, into this small farm that we live on. I have alpaca, I have chickens, I have a way of life that I chose with our money and our effort. And clearly, we had legislators come out and see the property and speak with Mr. Lepore. We had the LGD from the Weld County come. We're a half-mile in from Boulder County. Boulder County ended up stepping in and helping quite a bit with communications to you all and to, anyway, a major effort. Thousands of hours of my life. And then May 31st, Matt Lepore went ahead and approved the 12 wells, even though on the website we have many, many issues that were brought up, have never been addressed. We never got contacted about things like what happened to all there were so many violations already by oil and gas industry in that area, never even talked about. I sent numerous articles about health concerns, health studies to Rebecca, I forgot her name, Trites, and John Nadeau. I mean, anybody who could turn a blind eye to everything that has been going on for since November 25th, 2014, is either ignorant or I don't even know what. I have absolutely been treated horribly, very politely. It's like a basilisk in the Harry Potter series. Very politely, but behind the scenes, you guys just waited till, with the price of gas going down. So our life, basically as of May 31st, 2016, is ruined. We are being forced out of our home. I'm being forced out of being a farmer. I'm being forced, I cannot live there. I've been extremely clear since the beginning that I cannot live around that situation. I have been forced out of my life by the COGCC. I've been forced out of my life by Encana, which is now Crestone Peak Community Relations. They don't even give you a name. So I have a copy of what I did is I tried to get a hearing, a docket number. I tried to get a docket number and it got refused because I'm a public person, I'm not a lawyer, and I did my 2 pages. And then I got a notice about 3 weeks later or something like that said you can't have your 15-minute docket experience because you did a 510 instead of a 503 or something like that. It's amazing. So I have a copy of what I wrote for my application to have a docket number for this particular hearing, and the response that I got from Julie and probably Matt, who helped her out, on how to refuse this woman more, because you guys are tired of hearing me. I've probably been a lot of you have heard me 6 to 8 times, I'm sure, or maybe even 10. And then I wrote a letter to Crestone Peak and Mr. Mohan from the Canadian Pension Corporation and asking for 2 things. What is the expected and exact timeline for drilling the 12 Rasmussen wells and for the erection of the major industrial facility site in front of our house? And then I wrote, how is Crestone Peak planning to accommodate my family and I, and how are you planning to compensate us for not being able to live in our home during the entire drilling operation, including the 30-year production phase of the operation? We will not be able to return to our home and live the lifestyle we chose safely and with our property values intact. please fully explain how you are planning on compensating us for your violations and our losses. And as you will see in the copy here, they didn't respond to that. Irresponsible, unaccountable, it is awful. I totally don't respect Mr. Lepore or any of the commissioners. I'm so glad that guy back there does, but I do not. And many people I know do not. There is
Ms. Harper.
you guys are on the wrong side of history, as far as I'm concerned. So I have to leave my home. What are you guys going to do about that?
Ms. Harper, thank you for your comments. We'll be happy to take a look at the paper,
Sure.
and
I'm sure I'll return. Maybe I'll figure out how to find a way to get a docket number so I can spend 15 minutes and get
well, before
all
you
my neighbors here.
Before you interrupted, I was about to address that, if
I'm
you're
sorry.
interested. Thank you. Hearing Officer Murphy and Director Lepore work very hard with keeping everyone who has business before the commission, both proponents of activity and folks who have concerns with activity, in accordance with our practice procedures. And if that hasn't been the case, which I don't believe would prove, but we'll take a look at that. I'm going to ask Mr. Matter to involve himself in that as well. And we'll make sure that all opportunities that would be afforded to anybody in the same position are afforded to you.
Right.
Okay?
You know, if you don't understand all the rules and the details, and then you put efforts forward and nobody explains it except for after it's too late, you know, there you go. We have to move from our farm.
I appreciate how personal this is to you. We're always happy to continue respectful discussions with all members of the public and with all operators, and we'll be happy to take a second look and make sure everything is as it should be. Okay? Thank you for your time and for visiting with us today.
Chair, Ms. Harper's statement that was submitted was provided to the commissioners in their portfolio. The 2 additional documents I'll circulate to you all today.
Thank you, Ms. Murphy. We'll do a time check. Some of our, we've been a little lenient with the time today. These are important comments from top to bottom today. Just ask for efficiency in our future speakers, but we won't cut folks short today.
There are 3 additional, Therese Gilbert, and followed by Wendy Higbee, and then Barbara Flores.
Thank you. Welcome. Please get comfortable, and when you're ready, introduce yourselves. We look forward to hearing from you. Thank you.
All together, so that'll cut down. We're on the same topic.
Good morning.
Good morning. I'm Wendy Higbee from Greeley, Colorado. Thank you for this opportunity. Got to put my spectacles on. I represent Well Air and Water, a grassroots neighborhood group that started in my living room in 2013. A majority of us are mineral rights owners who have either been forced pooled or who have signed our leases reluctantly after weighing our limited options. Many of us own the mineral rights plan to be accessed by Extraction Limited Liability Corporation via the vetting wells, which are currently in the midst of the permitting process here at COGCC. We consider ourselves to be among the citizens to whom Director Lepore referred in an interview with Sharon Dunn in the August 24th Greeley Tribune. Quote, "The new rules have come out of citizen pushes through the proper channels, such as working with legislators to make change and commenting at COGCC hearings. Our group's strategy has been very predictable. We have appeared before this body for such rulemaking, and also on the few occasions when we have determined that oil and gas development plans exceeded reasonable bounds by encroaching into densely populated urban areas of Greeley, too close to vulnerable citizens, too near their schools, recreation centers, apartment complexes, and subdivisions. Out of the thousands of sites that COGCC has permitted over the past 4 years in Weld County, only 6 have received our focused attention, and I will refer to them by their common neighborhood names. And maybe it's hundreds, not thousands. Forgive me if I exaggerated. Fox Run, Northridge, Midtown, Frontier, Gilbert, Triple Creek. Today we come before you with regard to a 7th location, vetting. We refer to vetting as the Bella Romero wells, because the planned location is within approximately 1,300 feet of the Bella Romero Academy, a middle school in East Greeley. First, we want to thank the COGCC for its diligence and care in placing these permit applications on hold for more information gathering. And we ask today that you use your discretion to treat this project as an urban mitigation area. We think the site deserves the extra scrutiny for several reasons. The surface operations, while technically in Weld County, are immediately adjacent to Greeley municipal boundaries. It is a high-intensity operation with 24 wells planned. Traffic would go through the floodplain of the Platte, and of course, the proximity to the middle school. All of the foregoing make it a problematic urban location worthy of being subjected to the requirement that alternative locations be seriously considered and other prudent strictures. As I stated earlier, many of the members of Weld Air and Water are mineral rights owners, either force-pooled or reluctant lessors, and some of them are owners of the mineral rights associated with these vetting wells. We are very much concerned about the social justice aspects of this particular site. We are our brothers and sisters keepers. We care about our neighbors in East Greeley and don't want to see their neighborhood and the children of Bella Romero Academy negatively impacted by imprudent urban oil and gas development. I thank you so much for your time and would add just one more thing. As I sit here with modest and predictable requests for reasonable oversight, I want you to know that sometimes I wonder if future generations, rather than thanking us, will perhaps curse us for not demanding and doing more. And so I ask that you please consider the legacy we leave to the 7th generation hence. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Therese Gilbert. I'm also a member of Weld Air and Water and a mineral rights owners. And I'll go over issues. I'm an educator in Greeley. This is my 24th year, so I took a day off school to come down here for my 3 minutes, so got to make it count. Thank you again.
Bring the kids next time.
I know, I should. I'll kind of explain why I'm here and not the school district, but
Fair enough.
I welcome the idea that there will be a USR in process in Weld County. And the two documents that I want to share with you, I can give these to Ms. Murphy. I just made 4 copies, but this is right off the Weld County Commissioner's site, the guidance document. And what Ms. Hybe has referenced is that these wells will be 500 or 600 feet from the playground. So a block away, 24 wells, 18 condensate tanks, 22 batteries, all this within a block of where these children are playing. Bella Romero is 92% poverty. It's really on the other side of Greeley from the Triple Creek, the west and the east, both the same company Extraction as the putting forth the permit to drill. We believe that even technically it might be a UMA as of now. The satellite image that they included in the permit was from 2012, and in our many visits to that area, there is, with the document I showed you, there is another trailer on property number 9. And also, on this document, if this well pad is even a half a degree inched south, you would clip another house in the northeast corner of a subdivision, because right now you're about 20 feet from their back door. It crosses the backyard. We are very worried about this site, Weld Air and Water. Though we aren't neighbors, you will hear from someone who is. Reached out to Mr. Lepore this summer. Within hours, he got back to me and contacted the superintendent, Deirdre Pilch. What makes this even more problematic is that the school has no legal standing. They don't own the land that the school is on. So I have even more legal standing as a mineral rights owner than the school does. So I'm not privy to any discussions that Mr. Lepore had with our superintendent, but that was very much appreciated. I think for 2 reasons. We need to protect the kids. Another health study, I might hand this to Dr. Wolk. Webb's et al. Study that covers 700 compiled studies came out in February of this year that you really shouldn't locate these wells. They suggest a mile away from sensitive populations like children, and primarily we're concerned about the VOCs. So at the best hope, if these wells are even leaking, 3% VOCs, it's a sixth grade math problem, times 18, you have 80% leakage 500 feet from a playground, and visiting that site often, it is about the topography because the wind always blows from the south towards the school. So I won't go into that. I'll leave this if anyone wants to read it. We do appreciate that we see the COGCC as helping the citizens of Weld. You're hearing from Weld today, obviously. 89% of the oil production in 2015 came out of Weld. The encroachment.
If I may ask you to summarize.
Yeah, summarize just that we would hope this commission can help Weld County come to a better understanding with the citizens, and if not, consider the Bella site a UMA, or a better site be located would be our best hope.
Thank you very much. Good morning.
My name is...
Good morning.
You ready? Hi, my name is Barb Flores. I live at 2045 Cherry Avenue. I'm almost across the street from this vetting project near Bella Romero. I'm also a mineral rights owner. I own about 3.5 acres over there where we live, and I'm just right in this area. My first concern is the traffic. They have stated that there will be minimal traffic, but they are still committed to exiting onto Cherry Avenue, even though CDOT has approved their access onto Business 34, which is on the east side of the well site. When they presented their proposal, Extraction presented their proposal, the Weld County Planning Commission and Weld County Commissioners, they put up pictures that looked like, you saw 4 wells, and this is going to be 24 wells, 18 tanks, almost across the street from me. It will affect my property values and our quality of life. Another point I want to bring out is their notification. There was no notification given to any of the parents from this school. I did not receive notification. They have 2 different notification maps, and most of the people on there were not notified. There were only like about 3 to 5 households that said they received any notification. I was not one of them. They have maps that show one location and maps that show another location when in fact there are 2 large areas. So it's much bigger than what they are actually presenting. They say that they will be running pipelines to decrease the traffic flow, that they will be piping oil underneath the ditch. Also, that they will not need to truck in water because they will get water through the ditch. Another thing I am is on the board of directors for Greeley Irrigation Company that owns that ditch they are expecting to take water from. We have not approved any drilling under that ditch. We have not seen an application for them to drill under that ditch. And we have also not seen an application for change of use for the water that 7N owns, 12 shares of the Greeley ditch. And if it is not to be used for agriculture, they must go through a change of use process. And I'm not stating this as, saying what our position is at this time as the ditch, but just saying where I have knowledge of the things that need to be done here that they have not done.
Thank you. If I could ask you to summarize, please.
Yes.
Thank you.
let me see if there's something I've forgotten here. Oh, also, they submitted to you pictures from this site. And this is what their pictures showed, that it was just nothing but cornfield. I have attached, and I will give Julie all of my documents here. That is not what is there. You can see the homes that are near this area, and this is what actually, I stood out in the middle of that site on Saturday and took these pictures. So this is what's really there. It is not just dirt and just corn.
Very good.
Okay.
Thank you. If you want to share anything with Ms. Murphy, she will in turn put it in the records of today's proceedings and share with all the commissioners.
Okay, thank you.
So I got one question.
Yes, question please, please.
Is this site,
Commissioner Holton.
is that going to be in the city limits of Greeley, or is that going to be Weld County?
It is 2 blocks outside the city limits of Greeley.
Okay, what ditch was that? What's the ditch name?
Ditch number 3.
Yeah, Greeley Irrigation Company, ditch number 3.
That's what makes it more problematic. We're used to working with the city, and it's a different, it can be.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Ms. Hybe, Ms. Gilbert, Ms. Perez, thank you very much for making the trip to Denver and sharing these thoughtful comments with us today. Commissioners, let me ask we're a few minutes behind, but does anybody need a 2 to 3 minute stretch of the legs before we get into the consent agenda? Let's do that. Let's just take the short, I think Commissioner Randall.
Sorry, if I could just make and I don't want to delay this unnecessarily, I want to make a quick announcement just to share some news with the commissioners. The Secretary of State, Wayne Williams, has, and this is sort of breaking news, but announced in the last hour that 2 ballot initiatives related to oil and gas, number 75 and 78, did not have enough signatures to make the ballot. And so this is something about which I think you all have seen presentations maybe in the past or gotten information and might get questions. The Secretary of State put out an announcement finding that while they collected more than the required 98,492 signatures, there weren't enough submitted to compensate for the signatures rejected during the random sampling process that they go through. According to the Secretary of State, proponents have 30 days to appeal to Denver District Court. I don't know anything more about the process than that, but again, this is just a topic about which I suspect you all might get questions. So I wanted to share that news. Thank you.
Thank you, Executive Director. Timely as always. Very good. Well, we can mull that over on our 5-minute break. We will reconvene with our consent agenda and enforcement hearings. Thank you.
How you doing?
We're going to reconvene, please. Thanks, everybody. Commissioners, let me ask you a question. We're running a little behind. I don't know if it's logistically possible, but we could have an earlier lunch than we sometimes do and have our executive session over lunch. Give other folks an opportunity to run out and grab something, and we could probably keep us on schedule then for commissioner orientation.
Chair. My only note is that we do have an hour-long lunch break allocated in the middle of the orientation, so if we're running late, we could also just squish our lunch period.
Have a shorter lunch, okay.
It's up to you.
2 options. Let's kind of see where we are, maybe around lunchish. Very good. Okay, well, thank you. We'll proceed now. We did run late, and I don't like to, but we had a lot of folks who wanted to share thoughts with us today, and we had our introductions, and we had some other important recognition to do today. So typically we will try to hold ourselves a little closer to the calendar, but here we are. So let's get on with the consent agenda. And I would ask first if any commissioners have recusals or other statements to make before we proceed. Hearing none. Ms. Murphy, would you like to run us through the consent agenda, please?
Yes, Chair.
Director?
I'll let Ms. Murphy proceed.
Thank you.
We have 42 dockets that are recommended for approval based on our hearing officer review under the kind of the general adjudicatory hearings. Typically for our new commissioners, we take those up first, and then in a second round of a vote, we take up the enforcement group. And of course, if anybody would like to abstain from a vote, please let me know you're doing so I can make sure the record captures the votes themselves. So.
Mr. Chairman?
Please.
Thank you. I think I would elaborate just a little bit on the consent agenda for the benefit of the new commissioners.
Please.
The consent agenda items are those items, those applications for which there have been no protests or any protests submitted were resolved, and for which the commission staff has reviewed and recommends that those applications be granted. That's what gets onto the consent agenda. Nonetheless, those things need a vote of the commission because there is a commission order will be entered as a result of your vote. Secondly, we typically vote on all of the consent agenda items as in a block. We separate them out into these various groups really for just convenience and logistical ease as we go through them. We do tend to separate them by operator or some other organizing factor in hopes that makes it a little bit easier for you. But understand that typically we would, typically somebody will move approval of all groups A through L. There's an opportunity to second that. There's an opportunity for conversation about those, and then a vote on all A through L. Lastly, in that vein, you do have an opportunity, you have two opportunities before you vote. One is to recuse yourself if you have a potential conflict with any of the matters in any of these groups. So if, for example, you represent extraction, oil and gas, or have some business relationship with extraction, and you see that extraction is in groups A, B, and L, and J, and I'm just using this as an example, you might feel the need to recuse yourself from those. We need to know that ahead of time so we can reflect the vote accurately. Last but not least, if any of these matters have something in them that you want to ask staff a question about, this before you all vote is the opportunity to do that. So if you read the application, you understand staff is recommending approval, but you have a specific question, you have the opportunity to either raise that question, or I think procedurally the right thing to do is take it off of the consent agenda. We move it out of the consent agenda for an actual discussion and then separate consideration. So apologize for that,
No,
but
thank
I
you.
think
Very important,
it's
Director.
helpful to understand the
Thank
kind
you.
of what's going on here.
It's just typically there are, commissioners, you will see a sharp decline in the participation in the audience often after consent agenda because the operators for whom we might vote yes or no on their applications have a representative in the room. So to the director's final point there, if there was an application you saw and you just had questions on, or you didn't, you think it deserved a discussion outside of the grouping here, all one has to do is ask, and we will remove that from the consent agenda and address it individually. Thank you, Director. That was very important, and I appreciate your doing that. That being said,
Mr. Chairman,
was that Commissioner Pierce?
if I may,
Please.
I move approval of the 42 applications recommended for approval by staff. Second.
We have a motion and a second for approval as recommended by staff of all 42 hearing officer recommendations in groups A through L.
Yep.
Just checking with the move-in, is that correct?
That's correct.
Thank you. Any questions or discussion from commissioners?
I'd like to abstain from the vote, please.
Duly noted. Ms. Murphy, got that? Yes, thank you very much.
I will abstain as well.
Very good, thank you, sir. We have 2 abstentions. We do still have a quorum. That's affirmative. And so, is there any final discussion before we call the vote? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion on the table, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye, excuse me. And any opposed, same sign. The motion carries. Groups A through L exclusive are approved, and we had 2 abstentions. Thank you. Somebody want to introduce Enforcement Group A? No, we're not going to introduce it. We have Enforcement Group A. You have it on your agenda. You have the materials in your packets. What's the Commission's?
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Pleasure. Thank you, Commissioner Benton.
I move approval of Enforcement Group A.
We have a motion. We have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Moved and seconded. Is there any discussion, Commissioners? Hearing none, we'll call the question. This will be with regard to docket number 160700208, 258, and 160800309, Enforcement Group A matters. All in favor of approval as recommended by staff, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, same sign. Hearing none, that motion passes as well, and Enforcement Group A is approved. Thank you, Commissioners. I see Mr. Gowan has arrived.
Yes.
Time for our enforcement hearings, Mr. Gowan.
Would like to briefly introduce docket number 160600198.
Thank you.
Typically, this is an AOC, and typically, just as you have just seen, you've just approved the first 3 administrative orders by consent on your consent agenda. This one's a little different, and I want to offer some context as to why it is different. So, again, these are administrative orders by consent. So these are enforcement orders that are agreed upon by the staff and the representatives of the operators. So, this is the first of several similar consent orders that staff's been working on for the last several months. I will not be getting into the details of this particular administrative order. If you have questions later on the specifics, there's representatives from both the operator and staff available to answer your questions. What I want to do is just provide context for this and then for the subsequent administrative orders that you'll be seeing hopefully next hearing cycle. So these orders are intended to address a systematic problem that we have with some operators. And those problems are related to the submission of timely and accurate Form 5s, which are drilling completion reports, and Form 5As, which are completed interval reports. The problem has been that a number of operators don't get these right, they don't get them filled in on time, and the communication between staff and the operators leaves much to be desired. So what's happened is that this has created a significant backlog in the approval of these orders, or excuse me, of these forms. So what the solution is, the enforcement team has been working with both the permitting unit as well as the engineering unit, because those are the 2 units that approve these forms as they come in from the operators. So instead of doing the normal enforcement, which is if we see a violation, we write out we issue a notice of alleged violation, or what we call a NOAV, and we have a formal enforcement process. But in the case of these delinquent forms, the operators have hundreds of these delinquent and inaccurate forms. And so instead of doing the regular enforcement process, we've done what we call a global resolution. And so the approach on what we've done here is senior staff, including the director, met with the operator's senior management to make sure that the operators understand the magnitude of the problem. And also to get a commitment from the operators to solve the problem. Then, the overall approach is to explain in great detail what is expected with the forms as they are submitted. And so, our permitting and engineering staff met with the operator staff who are responsible for not only submitting the forms, but also providing the information that gets submitted on the forms. So we met with the operators. We've had the first high-level meeting. That was the one that included the director, the deputy director, and managers. Then as a follow-up, we met with our technical staff, met with the technical staff of the operators. And it was a free-flowing dialogue, lots of questions asked. We walked through what it takes to fill out the forms. So there's a lot of hand-holding, lots of dialogue. And so that was the beginning of the process. And then the next step was we solicited the operators to submit what we call template forms. So they selected typically number of wells on a pad, and those would receive very detailed comments from our staff. So it was an educational process where every little blemish was explained why it was a problem, and explained how that problem could be solved. So that was through the template process. Then once we get through that, remaining forms are scheduled in batches. And instead of having all of the delinquent forms come in at once, they're bled in and they're considered by staff one batch at a time, so that the second batch does not come in until the first batch has been resolved. So it's an iterative process, and there's scheduled submissions, and there's penalties for failure to meet the deadlines. But the most important thing is that we've taken the time to work with each operator to explain what the process is, and as a result, we're presenting an administrative order by consent which provides a global resolution of the problem. So we've got, it happens that PDC is the first one. We get a lot of cooperation from the operator, but would like to acknowledge the efforts by our permitting staff, our engineering staff. This took a lot of time and energy. So Jane Stanzik, our permitting manager, kind of ran interference, gave the enforcement team the full perspective of the technical details, which frankly, the enforcement team didn't understand. Barbara Westerdale, the permitting supervisor, was instrumental in drilling down and getting all the information and coordinating with all the operator people. The Ashley Noonan, the permit technician, got down and dirty and helped us with all the details with the operators. So our entire enforcement team was involved in these cases, and we had periodic check-ins with the director, so this is not just a staff effort. And I think at this point, as I said earlier, we have, with regard to this particular administrative order by consent, if you have specific questions, we've got staff available to answer. The operators got representatives here. But at this point, we're just asking for, that there will be no formal hearing on this, because this is in fact an administrative order by consent, and we're just simply here asking for your approval of this. But we thought that this was big enough, novel enough, that it deserves some kind of introduction. So, That's all I have.
Well, that's a great introduction, thank you. I know we have a representative here of PDC as well.
Yes.
Do other staff or the parties want to address the commission at all?
We weren't planning on any presentation, but it's up to the representatives of the staff and operator.
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Pierce.
But before a motion or after a motion, I have a couple of questions, if I may, whenever you feel is proper.
As do I, Mr. Chairman.
I'm comfortable with questions now. I think, we have other folks who've worked hard on this matter and
There's a lot of people in the room available to answer questions.
Very good, thank you.
Commissioners,
after you,
Pierce and then Benson, please.
All right, thank you. I appreciate it, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Gowan. I want to back up to the front and get a sense of how big a universe you've just explained to us, and I appreciate the explanation, and I appreciate all of the efforts that have been and are being put into this, but I don't have a sense of the universe that we're trying to address here. I mean, I know that, I think I understand that you're telling me that the matter being presented to us dealing with PDC this morning is similar to other situations with other operators?
That is correct.
But that is a limited number of other operators, or is this truly a systemic problem?
I think Jane Stanza can probably answer that question a little better than I can, but I think there is a systemic issue, and I think it was a matter of priorities going back several years ago. The biggest priority for the permitting unit was to get the permits out. Now that we have time to get back on these Form 5s and 5As, we're basically working on a backlog. And the 5 operators that we are focusing on at the beginning had a serious number of delinquent and or inaccurate forms, so those are the ones that we focused on initially.
But your plan or process is to expand the coverage so that eventually, through whatever guidance documents or whatever the commission decides to use, we'll correct this for lots of other folks? Is that
Yes.
fair? All right,
This is
thank
a
you.
global settlement that we would expect to apply in many other cases.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Gowan. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner Pierce. Commissioner Benton.
Thank you, Mr. Gowan, and that covered some of my questions. I'm curious, and I think from reading through the information that was provided with PDC, it appears that the wells were completed and on production, and they had yet to file the completion reports. I'm curious if some of this is developed out of multi-well pads and folks delaying completions on, say, 8 to 10 wells, and then all those wells get completed and then they sort of forget to catch up. And if that's part of the issue too, is that now we may see 6 to 8 months between the time a well is drilled and cased and the well is completed if we get to these larger multi-well pads. And if that also has caused a bit of this issue as well.
That is a factor, and one of the problems is that it goes beyond that, but that is a contributing factor.
And I'm left with thinking that you've started with 5 operators, but it sounds like there may be more, which then goes back to, as Mr. Lepore said, there's a lot of small operators here. How about the resources that they're going to have available for them to stay in compliance? A lot of times small operators don't drill multi-well pads, so it may be less of an issue, but somewhere that it's still going to be, they're going to get caught in some, I'm concerned to get caught in this without knowing that it's coming.
So, not sure what the question was, but
do you anticipate there'd be an issue with down to some of the smaller operators, or does it get, as you get down sort of below the Bonanza Creeks of Colorado, then does it become less of an issue because there's just less wells drilled?
it is a function of wells being drilled, but this type of solution, staff is prepared to work with operators on a case-by-case basis for purposes of achieving overall compliance. And I think that's probably the simplest way to put it. And we'll do whatever is necessary to make that work. We thought that that approach was a whole lot better than simply issuing NOAVs and prosecuting those. That would be the typical way of doing it, and that would have been grossly inefficient.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, I did notice that Mr. Neslin was somewhat getting a little interested in perhaps saying something, but I don't know if we want to afford him that opportunity or not.
Thank you. I took it as he was, maybe I put him on the spot earlier and he was about to, but Mr. Neslin and Ms. Beckstead, obviously you and others who have been involved in this, we're always happy to hear from you. But no one's put on the spot.
Commissioners, I'm Dave Neslin. I'm here on behalf of PDC. Happy to answer any questions. I think Mr. Gowan's done a nice job of providing an overview of this. The only thing I would note is you have previously approved 3 AOCs in the past dealing with the same issue. Carrizo, Great Western, Synergy, all of which you approved within the last year, dealt with the same issue. This is a little bit more elaborate process for programmatically ensuring that any inaccurate forms are corrected and refiled. It spells out that process in greater detail, but it's not a new or different process than you've seen in the past and that other operators have previously employed. On behalf of PDC, I'll simply say PDC prides itself on its, I think, good relationship with the Commission and its history of responsible energy production in the state. And its focus here is in getting this behind it, and if there are problems with some of the forms that it's filed, correcting those forms and moving forward.
Thank you, Mr. Neslin. Ms. Beckstead, I see you've joined us at the table.
Well, good morning, Commissioners. Britta Beckstead, Assistant Attorney General. I don't really have anything to add. Peter's articulated the amount of effort and time that has gone into this. So we just ask for your approval of this AOC. Thank you.
Well, thank you all. Commissioners, what's your pleasure?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Thank you, Commissioners Holden and Benton. We have a motion to approve and a second. Any discussion or questions from the Commissioners? Hearing none, we'll call the question. All in favor of approving the AOC as recommended in docket number 160600198, matter PDC Energy Incorporated, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, same sign. Hearing none, that motion passes. Thank you. Director Lepore.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just very quickly, I want to get back to Commissioner Benton's question about drilled and uncompleted wells, just to let you know or remind you that the staff has put out a guidance document for drilled uncompleted wells. So if operators elect to delay completion as they have, as you pointed out, Mr. Commissioner, it can give rise to some timing questions, deadlines that didn't anticipate that particular practice. My own opinion is that is not a meaningfully significant contribution to the issue that we're addressing through these enforcement matters, but that prospectively, the guidance document will help avoid those enforcement compliance issues.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Director. And let me say thank you to the parties, the representatives, and to all the COGCC staff, and it sounds like there were many who brought us to that conclusion today. Thank you. Okay, Commissioners, let's turn our attention, please, to our next agenda item, which is a presentation on Rocky Mountain low-level radioactive waste board notice to waste generators and treatment and disposal facilities. We have at least 2 presenters today, and who's going to introduce this? Director Lepore?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Very brief introduction. Gary Bauman, who's about to take his seat there, is the Director of the CDPHE Hazardous Materials and Waste Management Division. Gary sent me an email a few weeks ago raising a question with me about the Low-Level Radioactive Waste Commission. I sometimes wish that I were the division director of that entity because it's a very under-the-radar sort of entity. There were some I'm sorry, Commissioner Walk, Executive Director of the CDPHE.
The position comes with a lot of baggage. I think that's what Larry is. Careful.
I'm very happy with my current executive director. Where was I? So the Low-Level Radioactive Waste Commission has encountered a situation that may raise some compliance issues. They do, in fact, have some regulations. And Gary, I think, essentially was asking for a little bit of help from the COGCC because of our relations with industry to maybe spread the word. So I'm going to stop there. They're going to tell you the details and turn it over to Gary and Ms. Green.
Thank you very much, Director Lepore. I've been introduced. I'm Director of the Hazardous Materials and Waste Management Division at CDPHE. Although I'm really wearing a bit of a different hat here today in that I am appointed to represent Colorado on the Board of Directors of the Rocky Mountain Low-Level Radioactive Waste Compact. The compact is made up of 3 states. It's Colorado, New Mexico, and Nevada. It was established in 1983 and is one of 10 similar compacts around the country made up of various combinations of states. And the primary purposes really of the compacts are to ensure that there is disposal capacity for low-level radioactive waste generated in their respective states. Make sure there's some place to dispose it, and also to regulate the import and export of low-level radioactive waste into or out of their respective compact regions. So along with me this morning is Barbara Green from Sullivan, Green & Seavey. I think you probably know Ms. Green fairly well, but Ms. Green is also the general counsel to our compact board, and so I'm going to turn this over to her to have her describe a little more about the compact itself.
Well, we're used to people not knowing much about the compact, and I think the comment about flying under the radar was not Gary's division, it was the compact, and we're happy to have been flying under the radar for a long time. It's a creature of federal law, and it's also state law, and as Gary mentioned, there are about 10 compacts around the country. They were started back in the late 70s and early 80s, largely because of efforts by the Western Governors Association and the governor of Colorado, because in those days, the people back east were talking about sending all of their low-level waste, and they had a lot of it, out there where nobody lived. And of course, the Western Governors Association initiated this process to make sure that the western states did not become a dumping ground for the nation's low-level waste. In order to prevent somebody from importing or exporting something that's an item of commerce, which waste is, a state cannot do that. A state cannot prohibit something coming into its borders, and it cannot prevent it from leaving its borders because only Congress can do that. But through the compact system, Congress gave compacting states the ability to prevent the import to the compact region if that compact region would agree to take care of its own waste. So as Gary mentioned, that's one of the primary purposes of the compact, is to make sure that waste generators in the compact region of low-level radioactive waste have a place to put it. Right now, our compact has one facility in our compact region and an agreement with a facility in the Northwest where we ship most of our low-level waste that is generated in the region. So it's a little counterintuitive. We have had a lot of issues with federal agencies or other organizations who say, wait a minute, you can't do that. You can't tell us we can't import or export. But Congress has approved these compacts and given the commerce power to the compacts to do just that. Because if they weren't able to regulate the import and export of low-level waste, they couldn't guarantee the economic viability of their own regional facility, and they couldn't ensure that the states wouldn't become the the dumping ground that they were worried about. Back in those days, according to the lore of the compact, there was a joke going around, which was, why does New Jersey have so many Superfund sites, but Colorado has so many environmental attorneys? And the answer to that was New Jersey had first choice. So I'll close with that to see if you have any questions. But one of the interesting things, too, about our board is we meet quarterly, and we rotate around our 3 states, Nevada, New Mexico, and Colorado. We'd love for you guys to come to one of our meetings. Each one of the representatives is appointed by the governor of the state, and it's a very interesting body because it's a little bit different from what we think about. But we also regularly have to tell people we're not concerned about health and safety. The board doesn't do that. So there's no level on what constitutes low-level waste, that below which you don't need regulation. All of it's regulated because health and safety is not the primary purpose. The states themselves set up their own health and safety regulations. So that's the overview of the compact.
Thank you, Barbara. So what's really driven our desire to come here today is that the board actually was provided information that there likely is waste generated from the oil and gas industry that is containing naturally occurring radioactive materials. No real surprise there. Naturally occurring radioactive materials are everywhere, and some oil and gas waste contain them at some level and others don't. So that's a matter of characterization of the waste. But we've received information that some of those wastes are being imported or exported from our compact region without involvement of the compact. And primarily this is looking actually at the border between New Mexico and Texas. I don't know if there's any specific allegation associated with the Colorado facilities, but as our board has discussed the issue, it's very likely that many of the waste producers and even some of the disposal facilities may be totally unaware of the fact that we have a compact, who the compact is, what the requirements are, that sort of thing. And so we've undertaken an effort to get information out to folks to explain that a bit. And I contacted Director Lepore, as he said a few weeks ago, to describe the issue here and kind of seek his assistance maybe in getting some of the information out to the oil and gas companies that generate some of the waste, because those are folks that we in my office, my day office, don't really deal with so much. And one of the recommendations he made was that we come and talk with you folks and make you aware of the issue as well. So I really appreciate his advice on that, and I appreciate his helping arrange for some time on the agenda today. So we're going to be providing, I think you've been provided a copy of the notice that we're going to send out, and we're going to send similar notice in each of the 3 states, modified with the appropriate contact information for the respective states. So you're aware, wastes that are generated within the compact region and are disposed within the compact region can be disposed as long as they're disposed in accordance with the requirements for those wastes in the respective state that's not regulated by the compact board. The compact board comes into play if the waste is being imported or exported. And if waste is being imported into the compact, as Ms. Green mentioned, there's only one facility really designated in our 3-state region right now to receive those wastes, and that's the Clean Harbors facility, Clean Harbors Deer Trail facility out east of Denver. So that's the overview of the situation. You've seen a copy of the notice. We'll be trying to get that information out through my solid waste program. We'll be getting that information out to many of the disposal facilities. And I really just wanted to make you all aware of that issue.
First of all, thank you very much, Director Bowman and Ms. Green. Director Lepore.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So let me tell you some of the things that Gary and I talked about. I thought this was an important first step to have them appear in front of you so that you're up to speed. Some of the thoughts are we could post this notice on our website. Might be necessary to put some context around it, but knowing that operators visit our website with some frequency, it might just be something, you know, a way to get the word out, which I think is what we're after here. Second, there are obviously the trade associations, and the trade associations have, for example, the Environmental Health and Safety Committee or the Legal and Regulatory Affairs Committee introducing Barbara or Gary or Mr. Slosky to those trade associations, and perhaps creating the opportunity for them to make a short presentation to the trades as well. Clearly, it's indirectly related to us, but we're just looking to create opportunities to help them. So welcome the Commission's thoughts on those ideas.
Well, thank you, Director. Commissioners? Commissioner Benton, go ahead. Ben, please.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think I heard mention at least putting the information on the OGCC website. I think it would be a great first step. I think raise that awareness. I think as wells mature and when you think about it, maybe not in our generation or the next generation, but generations to come, this is going to become more of an issue as we have more and more materials that will contain norms or T-norms, and we have to get rid of it. So I think it's a great place to start.
Thank you, Commissioner Benton. Good, Commissioner. The link to the business of this body and our stakeholders is crystal clear. And I, too, am supportive of finding appropriate ways we can aid in communications in your mission.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We'll proceed along those lines.
Very good. Thank you much. Appreciate your time.
No, thank you for yours. Appreciate it. We'll look forward to working together. And you and Director Lepore can talk offline about, you know, your executive directors and things like that.
It really was the low-level radioactive waste compact that I was referring to, for the record. Who's heard of them? Nobody.
All part of the package.
I don't even know what you're talking about. So, look, Commissioners, our next agenda item is scheduled to be an executive session, and we'll talk about what might be proposed if we were, in fact, to go into executive session and what that means. You know, I do think another way to look at the agenda might be to, as we have in the past, give folks a lunch break. It's a little earlier than normal, but we could have our lunch during executive session. I'm sure that will still give us some time to break as well. And then we could reconvene at 12 or 12:15 and pick back up on the last item of business before the commissioner orientation. And then I think if you took the lunch break out of the commissioner orientation, it would run exactly the same amount of time, 12:30, 4:15, something like that. Well, hearing no objection, I don't know if the lunches are here yet, but okay. Well, let's talk about executive session. Assistant Attorney General matter, perhaps in the vein we have been, a brief explanation for those who may not be familiar with executive session, what it is generally, and then we talk about the purposes of this one and see what the Commission's pleasure is. Thank you.
This afternoon, I'm going to talk to the Commission about a number of things, such as CORA and open meetings law. One of the components of the open meetings law is that it allows the Commission to, well, the general rule is that all of your meetings are open. The exception to that rule, or one of the exceptions, is that you can talk to your attorney in private about pending or threatened litigation or sort of unique legal issues that come before you. And what we typically do is identify those issues on the agenda so that the public knows specifically what they are, announce that you're about to go into executive session and have very limited legal discussion as opposed to deliberation or any decision making. You exit executive session and tell the public what you did. The mechanics of that, because it is an exception to the rule of openness, is that I have this sort of litany that I need to read and alert the public what statutory provisions allow us to go into executive session. So we have one item on the executive session agenda for today, which is to receive legal advice regarding the potential for entering into an intergovernmental agreement with Weld County regarding permitting processes. And then as Commissioner Spielman stated, there'd be a public discussion following executive session on the after lunch. One thing that I think would be worth repeating is that within the last month or so, we had a discussion about Section 1084 of the Act, which is 3460-1084 of the Act, which governs how applicants notify interested parties of pending proceedings. And since we have 3 new commissioners, although it's not on the agenda, I would like some guidance from the commission as to whether you would like to rehear some of that concerning notice. So let me advise the public that pursuant to the Open Meetings Law 24-6-402-3A2, which allows the commission to enter into executive session for conference with an attorney representing the board to discuss disputes and other legal questions. The topics of today's executive session are, number 1, the Weld County IGA negotiations, which are identified on the agenda, and number 2, if you so choose, a discussion regarding the proper application of Section 1084 of the Act. And with that, I invite you to seek a motion.
Right. No, thank you. So those would be the purposes of an executive session. What is the commission's pleasure?
So moved.
We have a motion and a second to enter an executive session for the, let's take a clarification, Commissioner Holton, for agenda items 1 and 2 as suggested by our attorney? Thank you. And the seconder agreed with that as well. Thank you. Commissioners, discussion? Not all in favor of proceeding as proposed into executive session for those 2 agenda items, for those 2 legal issues for discussion with our attorney, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, please same sign. Hearing none, we will move into executive session to seek counsel from our attorney on those 2 issues. And, you know, members of the public, I know some of you will be back and want to get lunch as well. Is 45 minutes work? We'll reconvene about 12:10. Okay, thank you. We are moving into executive session, temporarily adjourned, and we'll see folks at 12:10. Well, welcome back, everybody, from to the continuation of August 29, 2016 meeting and hearings of the Colorado Oil and Gas Conservation Commission. Assistant Attorney General Matter, could you please help us return to public session from our executive session?
Sure thing. During the lunch break, we went to executive session pursuant to the Open Meetings Law, which is CRS 24, Colorado Revised Statute Section 24-6-402-3A2, which allows the commission to enter into executive session to discuss pending legal issues and grievances and ongoing disputes. During the executive session, we had, I provided legal advice to the commission concerning entering into an intergovernmental agreement with Weld County concerning permitting processes, and also briefly discussed proper service of process under the Oil and Gas Conservation Act, which is 3460-1084. No decisions were made, and at this time it would be appropriate for you to get a motion to exit executive session.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to exit executive session. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Hearing none, we are back into general session, out of executive session. Thank you, Assistant Attorney General Matter. Before we begin commission orientation, we have one more important piece of business on our agenda today. That's the commission's discussion regarding entering into an intergovernmental agreement with Weld County regarding permitting processes. I know the Weld County Attorney Bruce Barker is here. Good afternoon. Let me turn it over to our Director, Matt Lepore, and I think we'll be hearing from both of you. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will introduce this subject briefly, and Bruce asked also for the opportunity to address you on behalf of the county. And the genesis of this IGA kind of follows from the governor's task force rulemaking and a decision by Weld County to require oil and gas operators to obtain a county permit for oil and gas operations. As I think I mentioned earlier today, heretofore, oil and gas operations in unincorporated Weld County are uses by right and therefore do not require a permit. Weld County has made the decision to require USRs, and in so doing, asked to meet with us, myself and Kathleen Stacks have sort of been the meeting goers to with Weld County. And the fundamental concept that Weld approached us with is an effort to minimize duplication of some of the pre-application processes between COGCC's drilling permit requirements and the county's use by special review permits. You all have a draft of this agreement. We have at least one iteration newer than the one that we have provided you. We will get you the most recent one or maybe a proposed final one very soon. But the USR process that Weld County contemplates would require operators to notify nearby building unit owners, nearby local governments. It would require them to hold meetings with interested parties under certain conditions. It requires operators to address questions raised by the county staff, and those county staff questions are often triggered by public comment. There is an understanding that Weld County would share public comment with COGCC, that COGCC would have an opportunity to comment on the Weld County permits. So looking at all of that, the thought was that if an operator goes through the USR process, perhaps we could structure that process, those requirements, in a way that largely mirrors COGCC's notice, meeting, comment requirements, and therefore, rather than make the operators do that all again after they've gotten their USR permit, that they wouldn't have to do it all again when they come to COGCC to get a drilling permit. Let me take a sidetrack for just a second to say that we've recently been working with URSA on a permit in Battlement Mesa for a large urban mitigation area facility. After URSA went to Garfield County and got a use by special review permit. Correct. And I know that process has been frustrating for URSA because they feel like they've already done this all once. There are a lot of contributing factors to the frustration and the time it's taken. But part of it is true that they're sort of answering the same set of public concerns in front of COGCC, in front of staff, that they did in front of Garfield County. So that's the concept. The concept is if the USR process looks enough like the COGCC process, can we structure an agreement that says for an operator who has been through the USR process, there are some things in the COGCC rules around drilling permits that we would say, you've done that. You've already satisfied those requirements. I think that's what I want to say, and I'll turn it over to Bruce.
Thank you. Appreciate being here and having the opportunity to address you. The Board of County Commissioners is very excited about this. It's something that we've been working on probably since about December of last year, January of this year. I think Commissioner Barbara Kirkmeyer addressed you probably in January, talking about the USR process. The key for the commissioners, what they look at is that they want to ensure that the operations are good neighbors with adjacent property owners. That's something that's very important in all land use issues, whether it be a regular use by special review or oil and gas operation. And so that really is the focus of their USR process, is having good communication, hearing what the surrounding neighbors want or what they don't want, having it so that that's addressed. Those issues of noise, dust, lighting, all those things, those really come into play. It doesn't really have anything to do, our USR process, we don't want to get into the anything that deals with operations per se. So that's sort of where we started. I think Matt put it very well in that we were looking at our process and looking at the COGCC process. We talked to a lot of operators to see what is it that you would see as being maybe a problem with having a USR process and this process. I think every one of them said, we don't want to have to go through it twice. So with that in mind, I mean, that's really the genesis for this IGA, was to create a way or means by which we can come to some efficiencies, some cost effectiveness, making it so we don't duplicate the processes. And I think we've achieved that, and we feel very confident in what we've laid out here. It's really been a joy to work with Matt, Kathleen, and Jake on this, just going through and setting it up, and I think we have a pretty good product. So I'm open to any questions you might have.
Well, great. Well, Director Lepore. Sorry, Mr. Chairman, if I may just elaborate on a couple of points before we get to questions. I think you'll see when you read the IGA that the IGA goes to some pains to indicate, for example, on siting of a location, that while COGCC will defer and give great deference to the county's decisions, we do retain the right to disagree, to not abide by that decision. I think that's important. As I think it's important to build in that concept of deference, that if the county commissioners, and it goes through this very public process and comes out with an agreed upon location, we should honor that unless we really see something that troubles us. So we'll give deference, it won't be absolute, we retain citing decision authority ultimately. The same is essentially true on best management practices. Weld County's going to look at this, potentially require things on some of the topics we've talked about. We would, again, defer to them, but retain the right to ask for more or different. Lastly, I want to say that if we go with this MOU, if you approve it, IGA, I do expect other counties will come calling. And so I think it's good for you to have in mind potentially the precedent that this might set. Now, again, I see this as potentially, we 4-ish years ago entered into or participated with Erie as they did an operator agreement between the municipality and an operator in Canna. And that has been replicated many, many times, and it has been improved on over time, and that is something that this commission and the executive director's office have been very supportive of. So we're kind of looking for other tools to formalize, if you will, or better define relationships between entities that have some jurisdiction in this arena. So I see this as potentially a good tool in that regard, but I wouldn't want anybody to lose track of that potential that, Boulder County, who has a different view of oil and gas than Weld County, I think that's a fairly safe statement, might want an IGA too.
Well, let's open it up for discussion. But Mr. Barker, let me just first thank you, and please thank the Weld County Commissioners for taking the lead on such an important issue. I do think other counties will be interested, and I think if I've learned little else than 5 years of service up here, and you've been a big part of coming and addressing us, I think there is a cry for some type of way to address multi-jurisdiction permitting. And I don't know if we'll get there, but I'm looking forward to trying. So I really appreciate your county's leadership, yours, and I guess my first question, and I don't know if it's for you or Director Lepore, is what conversations have there been with other stakeholders, operator community or otherwise?
Well, I can address that, but it's mainly from our use by special review permit process. We came out with a draft probably 3 or 4 months ago, maybe even longer, and had a stakeholder meeting to talk about that. We had one before that, talking about what we were planning on doing. Came up with the draft that we sent out. We got comments back from quite a few operators. Almost every one of them said the same thing, which is we're really wanting to see both the regulations and the IGA to see how they work. And I think that's something that the operators have been sort of holding back a little bit on their comments to sort of see how all this is going to work out. But so we've had at least 2 stakeholders, I think 3 stakeholder meetings. One that was extremely informative when we were coming up with the processes that we have, and also informing the IGA with quite a few of the different operators in Weld County.
When you say the regulations, it's the county's new use by special review regulations. Correct. And then the IGA.
Correct.
And of other non-operator, non-industry stakeholders, have we had an outreach yet to them, or?
We have not, and I think the commissioners are planning on doing that, making it so that they have a 3-reading process, and I think we've been putting off the second reading. Every time they put it off, the newspaper, the Greeley Tribune, and some of the other media have explained about the processes and put in the date as to when we'll be continuing that too. I think the commissioners would like to have a stakeholder meeting that would be open to everyone to get comments, one way or the other on this process. So we can look forward to that hopefully in about the next 30 days.
Well, that's great. Thank you. I'm just one of 9 up here, but I think that would be very meaningful to me, at least, to hear kind of what comes out of that, and perhaps even come and be a fly on the wall. Well, thank you. Let me turn it over to other commissioners. I'm sure there's a lot of questions or interest. Mr. Benton.
Brief. I think you may have answered this, but I was just reading this and just what operators have said back to you about the commission will give deference to Weld County where such processes provide equal or greater opportunities for public comment, provide equal or greater protections for public health, safety, and welfare. Any comments back from operators as to whether or not that's going to make it more confusing as far as getting wells permitted in Weld County as opposed to other parts of the state? Or open the Pandora's box of, how many counties did you say there were?
65.
55 different IGAs.
The comments that we got initially, and I think that we've gotten back off of this, is that the 2 things that all the operators said they see as being slowing their process down is the notice, so that when they send out the pre-notice, they get no comments, and then they go into the public comment process, and that's when everything occurs. And there was frustration that was expressed to us about the fact that it just is the type of thing where, they get that sort of at the end. The second thing was in citing, dealing with having it being more towards the end of the process. All this comes down to certainty. What they were asking, they said, what you could really help us out on is certainty. So with those 2 things in mind, that was really the sort of the focus of our reaching out to Matt and Kathleen and Jake, was to say, this is what we think would be very important. It's having a process whereby we can increase some certainty by having those, some deference by the COGCC to our notice and also our citing. And that was sort of repeated by all the operators that would be helpful.
And if I may, I think Commissioner Holden, you mentioned you have something similar to that in place now in Fort Lupton.
Most municipalities and counties do. They've got planning commissions and they've got the county commissioners.
And how has that, when you talk about certainty for operators, how has that worked for them?
You know, it's going to vary county to county. Weld is not going to act the same as Boulder. And so being able to take Weld County's template for this, spreading it across the state, I don't think it's going to happen. La Plata maybe.
Probably not, no.
You know, some of the other mountain towns, it's probably not going to happen. But it gives it's basically a way, like I said before, just to mitigate factors around what's going to happen on that area. And that's all it is. It's not taking over oil and gas's position as far as downhole or the batteries. It's to say, okay, you're going to put it in that corner. Well, my house is right there. So I'm going to want some landscaping or some type of buffering. And it's to mitigate to the extent that they can, the problems that they're going to have. And then on the siding side too, there's a lot of farmers, they don't want that thing in the middle of their field. They want it on the edge. And
right.
So they're going to want to go through that process and explain to the operators and everything. In a lot of those cases, I think probably what's going to happen is it's going to be approved by staff unless you get a bunch of protests. Then, like, you're going to have possibility of having to go in front of PC and having to go in front of the commissioners and possibly having to come in front of here. So I think they're going to want to try and avoid that. So maybe to lighten the workload here. Excuse me.
I mean, it does, I think, somewhere in there with that public comment piece, I think having more of an opportunity to get that out there, because you have you mentioned, you said, well, the person who owns the agricultural piece says, well, I want it over here, but it's next door to people who have homes within 1,000 feet of that or less, that's going to, they want that opportunity to have their voice heard as well.
No, we've had that. When I was on planning commission in Weld County, you know, depending on where they wanted to put a dairy or something, and it's like, well, I live right across the road. No, I'm not on that property, but how are you going to mitigate my view and the smell? Or maybe it's an oil and gas service company that's going to do the same thing. You know, it's going to be right in my backyard or right across the road. How are you going to take care of that so it's, you know, it's compatible with what my land use is? And that's really all the USR is, to make sure that it's compatible with the surrounding area.
Okay, thank you.
Other commissioner comments or questions?
And if
I have
I'm
a
wrong,
question.
Bruce will correct me.
You're right.
Commissioner Ager.
I have a question maybe for Director Lepore. I've seen attached to permits in La Plata County MOUs with the operator. What's the difference between an MOU and these USRs? Is the MOU just an outdated process that's being superseded?
It's a great question. So there's also some confounding of terminology, but MOU, Memorandum of Agreement, the MOU that you see on the permits in La Plata County, that's an agreement that the operator has made with the county. So COGCC is not part of that MOU directly. And La Plata County really, they were the innovator of that many years ago. And they went to operators and said, listen, if you're going to put that location here, here's a few things we want you to do. We realize that the COGCC rules don't require that, but if you don't agree to do that, we're going to make your life miserable. I'm paraphrasing. And the operators, you know, would say, okay, yeah, we could do that. And then they get their permit. The COGCC will take those MOU agreed conditions as long as they're things that we have jurisdiction over and put them into our permit, our drilling permit, and now it's something that we can enforce if the operator fails to comply. And that's a nice a symbiosis between ourselves and the county. Okay, that's, in a nutshell, that's what we talk about when we say MOUs or operator agreements. Those are still going on. That's what I alluded to earlier. I referenced Erie. Over the last 4 years, a lot of local governments have entered into MOUs with specific operators. This, what we're contemplating, is an agreement between Weld County and this body, COGCC, that doesn't directly involve the operator, but indirectly, the operators are beneficiaries in eliminating some of the duplication of the processes. So they're separate things. They, I would say, form, I hope, compatible parts of a kind of bigger picture regulatory scheme, if you will.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other commissioner comments or questions? Okay, hearing none. Mr. Barker, thank you for joining us today. Thanks for your work on this, and we'll look forward to hearing about next steps and visiting again, I'm sure.
Thank you.
Please, thank you. Commissioners, any other business before we move on to our commissioner orientation? Okay, if not, let's do that. I will be turning the gavel over to our vice chair. Commissioner Benton, would you be kind enough to serve as chair in my absence? No, thank you so much. And let's be reminded, those of us who have been here a while, what we're supposed to know, and let's further welcome our new commissioners. So, Director Lepore, is it to you?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to introduce you. Okay. You're first. Do you have a PowerPoint?
I do not.
Okay. So hopefully we can start to make this slightly less formal. I don't know. Are you broadcasting still? Okay. I'm not saying you need to. I actually prefer that you don't broadcast. We've announced that we will be doing this, and it's here and it's open to the public if people want to come. Does anybody feel differently?